Reasons why Christianity and Catholicism are true. Now, no, I did use grammar on this, and so some quotes may be and are likely changed. So first, we're going to prove that there's a creator to begin with. So, for everything to exist, there has to be a first cause. First cause is the first thing that caused everything else. So you could say that would be the Big Bang, but then you have to ask, what caused that, and then what caused that, and what caused that, etc. Therefore, there is a first thing, and that first thing is a first cause. And the first cause has to be infinite, otherwise it would have been created. And if it was created, it was not the first cause. So the first cause has to be infinite, and would have to cause other things to happen. So that can prove that there is a creator, because the first cause causes things. Now, you could logically assume that the first cause would have the intelligence to create things, so the first cause would have to be creator. And there's also many other laws. There's also many things and laws that work, like the laws of physics, time, and all that, because that is kind of unexplainable. I don't see how it would make more sense if a creator caused it, because there's not really a way to explain why time started or why atoms bond or react to certain things. It's complicated stuff, and there's like rules to life, like gravity and stuff. So that's another reason why there has to be a creator. Now, we've established that there is a creator. Now I'm going to try and prove that Christianity is true, and then we'll prove Catholicism. Now, so a good amount of these proof that Christianity is true I got from a site. Now here's some things that they're proof. That some things to mention here are proof. So the fact that we have over 6,000 pieces of proof to corroborate the Bible. That's one. Two, and we can have evidence from around. This is to prove the preservation of the Bible, not that it's real, which it is real, but this is to prove the preservation, so it's actually preserved. So. And we have evidence because around 200 BC, a man, this guy, he ordered translations of the Bible from Hebrew to Greek. And he had 72 of the best scholars in the world. And they translated these independently. And the thing is, they made identical versions, and they translated these independently. And you could look this up. The Greek version is called the Septuagint. I don't know how to spell it, but it's Septuagint, I think. But I have links in the description which prove the accuracy of the Bible. Not to mention the Dead Sea Scrolls, which was a collection of ancient Jewish manuscripts. And now we've proven the accuracy of the Bible. And you see, and that's good, because we need to prove Christianity. So let's not please. There's one way to disprove Christianity. It's to disprove the resurrection. The matter is fact, and the fact of the matter is, it can be. You see, there was a man named Saul who was actually against Christians, and he's persecuting them. But Tristan says he saw Jesus and he converted. Now, how does that make sense for a man? Well, yes, contents, it must be taken from the Bible. But this man wrote his books, which, yes, are in the Bible, but still. Does it make sense that this man went from, for this man to go from killing Christians becoming one? No, it doesn't. It doesn't. But he saw Jesus. And there were 500 witnesses to Jesus after the resurrection. That is. You could say this argument is bad because I'm using the Bible. However, events from the Bible have been proven to happen. And you can look this up. There was this tomb date before 70 CE, which I think is 80. And there was Christian markings, as these scholars involved believed. And these are Christian markings, as these scholars, they believed it was Christian markings involved. These are the scholars involved, and these are early archaeological records by Christians, and seemingly testifies faith and resurrection. And this is 70 AD. And again, you can look it up. There are claims verifying the Bible, and I'd say the Book of Luke can be used. Considering Luke, as far as I know, he didn't meet Jesus, but he based his claims off things he heard. His book is based on claims. Some more evidence to look at is that Gomorrah and Sodom are gone, and Eucharistic miracles, Marian apparitions, accounts of Jews being the Messiah. These you can look at. You can look at these. Probably look them up. Anyways, now we're going to prove that Catholicism is true. This is going to be a lot, I think. But listen up, please. It's going to be a lot, think about this. We must rely on God. We have the Bible, right? But humans can interpret the Bible wrong. So we have the Holy Spirit, right? Which guides the Catholic Church, which has existed for a while now. You could just say that the Holy Spirit could be guiding a different church, like Protestantism, or every believer. But if you say that, you have to remember there's all the different denominations. If the Holy Spirit is guiding all these different denominations, then why is there multiple denominations? For example, you have Baptists and Calvinism. They can't both be guided by the Holy Spirit because they're two different denominations. Same with all the other denominations. They can't all be guided by the Holy Spirit. Or maybe they can. But you have to ask, why will the Holy Spirit guide them wrong? And then there's multiple denominations. I mean, maybe it is, but I don't know. So we have the Holy Spirit, which guides the Catholic Church, which has existed for a while, but that's not really proof that it existed for a while. I mean, maybe it is. That's reason one. Before continuing, I'd like to say to those non-Catholics that Catholicism is not a works-based salvation. Here's the thing. I'm going to explain the Catholicism-based salvation because I think this is important because people think that Orthodoxy and Catholicism is a works-based salvation, but here, I'm going to explain it real quick. Just let me pull this up. There's also a link in the description to explain it, but I didn't understand it for a while. I compiled this together. I confirmed it with 2 other Catholics, maybe more than that, and ChatGPT. I confirmed the ChatGPT thing with other Catholics. I'll go ahead and read it right now. If I can find it, that is. Okay, this is what ChatGPT said. I asked it a question to ask it to summarize it, and I confirmed this with a couple other Catholics, so it is, I hope, right. This is what I said. Okay. You're on the right track, and it's great you're trying to understand the nuances of Catholic teaching on salvation. Let's clarify and explain your summary to make it more precise. Catholic understanding of salvation simplified. In Catholic theology, salvation is a process that includes several key elements: justification, sanctification, glorification. Here's a breakdown. Justification, what it is. This is a moment when a person is forgiven of sin and brought into a right relationship with God. It includes being made a new creation in Christ. How it happens? By God's grace, through faith in baptism, or the desire for baptism. Effect. The person is cleansed of original sin and personal sin, and receives sanctifying grace and becomes a member of the church. Not just for forgiveness. In Catholic teaching, justification is not only being declared righteous, but is also being made righteous. An actual transformation begins. So you're right about justification, which includes forgiveness and the beginning of transformation. 2. Sanctification. What it is. This is the ongoing process of becoming more holy, growing in virtue, and conforming your life to Christ. How it happens. Through grace, the sacraments, especially the Eucharist and confession, prayer, good works, and cooperation with God. Effect. Deepens your righteousness and justification. You become more like Christ. This is where the bulk of being made holy happens. It continues throughout life. 3. Glorification. What it is, a final perfection of the person, body, soul, and heaven. How it happens after death and possibly after purification, purgatory. The soul is fully united to God. Effect. Full participation in divine life and eternal happiness with God. Summary of your sentence. Sanctification is a part where you're being made more holy. Justification is where you're forgiven. I think begin to be transformed. This is basically correct, but it could be refined too. In Catholic teaching, justification is where you're forgiven and begin to be transformed by God's grace, and sanctification is a continuing process of being made more holy and conformed to Christ. Someone once told me, this is like a kind of something that I liked. Kind of, the thing is, they said that justification, like let's say you're trapped in a cave, right? Justification is you hear, there's people coming to save you. You say, I'm saved. You say, I'm saved. You hear that there's people coming to save you in the cave, and yeah. Now, they're at the cave, and they're pulling you out of the cave. So, first one, I'm saved. That's justification. You know that they're coming. You say, I am saved. And there's justification. You're being helped out of the cave. You say, I'm being saved. You're being helped out of the cave. Sanctification. That's sanctification. You're being saved. They say, I'm being saved. And then you're out of the cave. I don't remember what they said at that part, but that's glorification. You get the point, I hope. Anyways, I just wanted to clear up the Catholic idea of salvation so people don't think it's works-based. It's all dependent. It's dependent on God's grace, which is unearned and undeserved. 2. The Church Father quotes can be used to support Catholicism. That's reason 2, which you can see in the description. But I might use this one later. It says I will use this one later. I don't know if I do include it. I'm reading off the thing. Now, this is going to be a lot. Reason 3. It's a big reason. It's going to say that. Here it is. 3. There have been Eucharistic miracles and Marian apparitions which can be used to support Catholicism. For one, Eucharistic miracles are when the bread and or wine turn into real flesh and blood, and around or over 100 of these events have been accepted by the Catholic Church. Now, some scientists have done tests on these, and one of them even had like white blood cells and was alive, I think. But I'm going to read some quotes from an article that I will cite later. This is going to be a lot, so brace yourself. In 1999, scientific investigation began under the leadership of Ricardo Castanon Gomez, a clinical psychologist who specialized in brain chemistry. Histological samples were sent out to several experts for evaluation, particularly cardiologists and pathologists who scored the sample as either muscle or heart cells containing infiltrating white blood cells. Dr. Fred Zugib, a pathologist at Columbia University specializing in cardiology, reported that the sample was born from tissues of the heart undergoing degenerative changes of the myocardium, and these changes are because the cells are inflamed, and it is the left ventricle. It's hard to pronounce. Scientific analysis of Eucharistic miracles. Important of standardization and evaluation. A host was noticed on the steps of the altar by a communicant, and because the wafer appeared dirty, the priest immersed it in a container of water. Later the same day, the contents were transferred into a large container, more water was added. A week later, it was noticed that the host was not dissolved and was covered by a red stain, approximately 1 times 1.5 centimeters, 3,4, that's in brackets. The water was untainted by the color, an odd finding if dry blood or bleeding were involved. See below. 17 days after the initial observation, the priest separated the remaining bread and red cloth from the water and laid it on a corporal white cloth. The cloth was then transferred to a monstrance, a container of the display of concentrated hosts, and placed beside the tabernacle. Approximately 3 months later, samples were taken for histological analysis and performed by 2 different investigators. In this study, both light microscopy, transmission, and electron microscopy were employed. The conclusion was that the sample was myocardial tissue, particularly from someone showing signs of psychological stress. Same source. Details of this event were recently reported in the Annals of Case Reports by Galvin Publishers (22). This is only the second miracle type event that has been incorporated into the scientific literature. The first being the Lacino occurrence, published in the early 1970s. See above, and that's in like these things. Similar to previous incidents, a host was found on the floor of a church which was placed inside a container containing water. 14 days later, it was noticed that red spots were present. After 4 years, samples were removed for analysis involving primarily microscopic examinations staining showed that gram-positive rods are present together with a mixed bacterial flora. Myriads of high-frame spores were observed, some of them pygmaid. Use of physical rounded structures were noted, which in case were interpreted as fungal spores, brackets 22. Same source. These were all different events, by the way. Here's another one that happened in Poland. A concentrated host that had just been dipped in the wine accidentally fell to the ground, and according to procedure was placed in a metal chalice with tap water to dissolve. Approximately 11 days later, it was noticed that a small crescent-shaped portion had detached itself and was turning red, brackets 3, 4. 3 weeks after this observation, very small samples were removed for scientific analysis. Conclusions from this investigation include a presence of cardiac muscle, displaying, quote-unquote, displaying changes that often accompany a state of agony, end quote. These results were based on visual observation only, as, quote, the considerable tissue degradation preventing definitive and submersive chemical conformation, end quote, of the tissue, type brackets 4. Significant fragments of both nuclear and mitochondrial MT DNA were present, allowing the proof of quote, the human origin of this tissue beyond doubt, end quote, brackets 4. While no details are provided, it is unlikely that DNA samples, particularly mitochondrial MT DNA, were compared with all profiles of individuals known to be in contact with the material. This is important consideration in any investigation of this nature, which should be addressed. Microscopic examination show that bacteria is present, but, quote, only represent a negligible local contamination, end quote. It was reported that no bacteria existed that were known to produce coloring substances like Xigeria maricines. Additionally, it was said that there was no significant fungal contamination. Same source. Citation, quote, Kearse K, Ligaj F, period, Scientific Analysis of Eucharistic Miracles, dot on top of dot, I think it's a colon. Importance of a standardization evaluation, period, J, Forensic SCI, Res. 2024, dot on top of like a comma, 8-1, dot on top of dot, 078-088. If you want to find that article, it's in the description below. It's the Eucharistic Miracles one. Now, let me take a breather. That was a lot. I'll go into 4. Now, this is from another article. So, yeah. I'll read this one. Number 4. There are also Marian apparitions. And there have been multiple, but one. I would like to focus on the Fatima Marian apparition. So, supposedly 3 children were young and around 10, 9, and 7. Were tending sheep when they were visited by Mary when, quote, a lady in all white, more brilliant than the sun, indescribably beautiful, end quote, standing above the bush, appeared before the youngsters. And from October 1917, she appeared to them on the 13th day of every month. And the children reported that she sent a message from God for every man in the century, and she promised peace to the entire world if the requests of prayer, reparation, and concentration were met. The kids were subject to ridicule, but she promised a sign to prove to the world that she appeared, and many came to the region, around 70,000, including unbelievers, with the intent to disprove. Now, this is going to be crazy, okay? And suddenly, clouds separated, and the sun appeared between them in the clear blue, like a disk of white fire, end quote. Now I'm going to read the next. I'm next going to read what the website said. Quote, the people could look at the sun without blinking, and while they gazed upward, the huge ball began to quote-unquote dance. The huge fireball whirled rapidly with dizzy and sickening speed, flinging out all sorts of brilliant colors that reflected on the faces of the crowds. The fiery ball continued to gyrate in this manner 3 times, then seemed to tremble and shudder and plunge in a mighty zigzag course towards earth. The crowd was terrified, fearing this was the end of the world. However, the sun reversed its course and, retracing the zigzagging course, returned to its normal place in the heavens. All this transpired in approximately 10 minutes. After realizing they were not doomed, the crowd began ecstatically laughing, crying, and shouting with weeping. Many discovered that their previously drenched clothing to be perfectly dry. End quote. Now, I think it was raining for the past 3 days, and again, their clothes were perfectly dry, apparently. Previously drenched clothing. A link to this website can be found in the description. Now, I recommend you go to the website and read more. I do. Now, explain to me if Catholicism is false after hearing what I said. Now, to finish up this video, I'm going to give my own story, and then I'm going to give a quote. One of the reason I'll give you is the fact that I prayed that whatever path may be the right path, and I joined that path. Mind you, I did not want to be Catholic. This is when I was trying to decide if I should still be Protestant or be in another denomination, or whatever denomination is the right one. That'd be that one. And whatever that path be, that'd be that path. And I did not want to be Catholic. I really didn't. But after praying for a while, I decided that I wanted to be Catholic. And I didn't want to be Catholic. I prayed with this. I prayed that whatever path I wanted, the right path, I want to do that path. And I wanted to be Catholic as praying. Now, I did go to Mass and see the holiness of others, which is a big factor, and do research. But I believe that my prayer had revealed to me truth. That is why, in my opinion, you should be Catholic. Now, and there's church father quotes in the description, or at least links to one. But here is a quote from Irenaeus. Quote, Book 3, 3.2, not. Since, however, it would be very tedious in such a volume as this to reckon up the successions of all the churches, we do put to confusion all those who, in whatever manner, whether by evil self-pleasing, by vainglory, or by blindness and perverse opinion, assemble and authorize meetings, brackets, we do this, I say, in bracket, by indicating that tradition be derived from the apostles of the very great, the very ancient and universally known church, founded and organized at Rome. And it's not in the quote, but it's organized. I'll just go back, but Rome is where the Catholic Church is. Where was I? Oh, yeah. An universally known church founded and organized at Rome by the 2 most glorious apostles, Peter and Paul. As also, brackets, by pointing out, in bracket, the faith preached to men, which comes down to our time, using successions of the bishops. For it is a matter of necessity that every church should agree with this church, on account of its preeminent authority, that is the faithful everywhere, since the apostolical tradition has been preserved continuously by those bracket, faithful men, in bracket, who exist everywhere, end quote. Irenaeus was a student of Polycarp, who is a student of John. So, that is my video. Let's end. Put any objections you have in the description and the comments. I don't really know how to rebuke orthodoxy other than the fact that they don't maybe not rely on much on stuff. I don't know. They rely on, like, councils, I think. I don't know. which are supposedly guided by the Holy Spirit. I suggest you do more research. And maybe pray for me that I'll be Orthodox or Catholic. Or whatever one's right path, I don't know. But that is my proof. I say. And there's evidence in the description.